Once a month, when the moon reaches its highest point in the sky and the wild creatures call out to the night, he emerges from a private sanctuary in an undisclosed location outside of Little Rock, Arkansas. Arrayed in his priestly vestments, carrying forth the good news that comic books and graphic novels aren't just for kids, that they aren't just mass and spandex superheroes, that storytelling in a graphic format can be so much more. He is the Graphic Novel Apostle.
Hello and welcome back to the Graphic Novel Apostle podcast. I'm your host, Mark Orenberger, and I am so happy to be here with you, as always, as we continue this week in our Batman The Long Halloween series with episode 6 of that series, where we'll be covering issue 6 of Batman The Long Halloween, a series that was published by DC Comics all the way back in 1996 and 1997, written by Jeph Loeb, art done by Tim Sale, colors by Gregory Wright, and letters by Richard Starkings and Comicraft. But before we get into today's episode, if you are new here to the Graphic Novel Apostle podcast, let me first say welcome. I recommend that episode 6 of 13 in this Batman The Long Halloween series is probably not the best place for you to start. Either go back to episode 1 of our Long Halloween series, which was episode 19 of the podcast, or I would even recommend that you check out one of our book club episodes, which are really, as I have said so many times, the heart and soul of this podcast. And if you don't mind me to make a couple of recommendations for you, episode 1 of this podcast, which was a book club episode where my friend Chad Toppy and I discussed the book Spy Superb by Matt Kent, is an early favorite of mine. And then episode 21, it was a book club episode where my buddy Michael Crump and I talked about True Cult. That is probably my favorite episode overall of the podcast so far. Or one more, all the way back in episode 4, we did a book club episode called I Kill Giants, which is a well-known and an important graphic novel with my friend Crystal Hogg, who is a clinical social worker and had a lot of really interesting insight to add to the story, and particularly the relationship between the school counselor and the little girl who is the protagonist of that book. Really would encourage you to check out that episode. I also want to let everybody know, or just give you a reminder if you're already a regular comics reader, that this coming Saturday, the first Saturday in May, is National Free Comic Book Day. So if you have a participating comic book shop anywhere near you, the way this works is you can go into that shop. They will likely have bushels of comic books that are specifically designated as free comic book day specials that publishers will put out. All of the big publishers, Marvel, DC Comics, the big independent publishers, Image Comics, Boom Studios, publishers like Archie Comics usually participate, and even down to some of the smaller presses as well. There will be select issues that either introduce characters or storylines or events that these comic book companies have coming up that they want to introduce you to their characters and their worlds, and hopefully sell you some comics on down the line. Comic book shops also usually will have really good sales to go along with that. My local comic book shop, where I will definitely be this coming Saturday for at least some period of time, always does a great sale on graphic novels and trade paperbacks, which I usually like to take advantage of. And so if you happen to be in the central Arkansas area, I would encourage you to go on down to Kapow Comics, which is on Keel Avenue in Sherwood. That is my local comic book shop, a place where I've developed some great relationships with the folks who work there and some of the other customers that I see regularly on Wednesday afternoons when I get off of work and go to pick up my weekly comics. Say hi to those guys and check out what they've got. And also, if you're going into a comic book shop and you're going to get some free comics, I mean, that's wonderful. I would encourage you to also buy something while you're there. Those comics are free to you. They are not free to the comic book stores. And so it really does a world of good for those local businesses if you will pick something up and check it out while you're there. There will be comics for kids and comics for adults. Okay, with all that, what do you say we go ahead and get into the meat and potatoes of this week's episode, where we are going to be talking about issue 6 of Batman The Long Halloween. Now, this is a 13-issue series. This is issue 6. We are at the midway point in our series. Now, that should probably tell you we're not likely to solve the mystery of who Holiday is, this killer we've been chasing for the last 6 months, who commits murders only on holidays and leaves holiday-related clues behind. Maybe not clues. What would you call them? Trinkets, tokens, something that acknowledges the holiday, and that being the importance of the day when the murder is going to take place. Well, because we're still playing a little catch-up in our series, it is March and St. Patrick's Day in Gotham City, and I want to remind you of something very important from the end of our last Batman the Long Halloween series episode, which was that Bruce Wayne had received a rose on Valentine's Day, the thorn of which pricked his finger, and when he went home that evening, he found himself entranced and immediately in love with the villain Poison Ivy, who was waiting for him in his outside garden. That's going to come into play very quickly here in this issue. But we have another new character who's introduced at the beginning of this issue. Being released from the Gotham City Penitentiary, we have Sophia Falcone. Now, she is the daughter of Carmine the Roman Falcone, and the way Sophia is drawn, it looks like she probably serves as a heavy for the Falcone mob. Somebody who is an enforcer type, probably gets her knuckles bruised a whole lot, probably has to strangle somebody or shoot somebody from the shadows once in a while, and in fact she's deployed in this way in this issue as well. And I guess the role that she holds is actually very similar to the role that her cousin Johnny Vitti held in the mob of her aunt, Carla Vitti, who, if you guys will remember, is a mobster mostly from Chicago. That seems to be her city, but she's been hanging around a lot in Gotham, and we certainly see some tensions that are taking place between Carla Vitti, who may have her eyes on taking over her brother Carmine Falcone's operations in Gotham City, and of course the Roman himself, who holds the position of big boss of organized crime in Gotham. Well, one of the things that the Roman does with Sophia in this issue is he dispatches her to go meet with her aunt, Carla, and to let her know that the Carmine Falcone gang is going to be making a move on the Maroni gang. It seems that the suspicions between the Maronis and the Falcones, and maybe even among the different factions of the Falcones, about whether one of them might either be Holiday or somehow supporting or aiding Holiday in their monthly killing, have increased over time to the point where we are now getting violent with one another between these mobs. And what Sophia needs to find out from her aunt is, if we make this move on Maroni, are you going to come back on us for doing so? And Sophia says, no way, I'm good. I'd like to see those guys taken out. And in fact, she says she's good as well because the money is flowing again. Now that relates to something else that's going on here in this issue. It's the monthly board meeting of the Gotham City Bank, and Bruce Wayne, who is now the head of the board, makes an announcement that shocks but delights his fellow board members. He announces to them he thinks it's time for the Gotham City Bank to do business with Falcone Imports, an important business in this city. And as I said, these fellow members of the board, who we maybe have some suspicions might be corrupted or have their palms greased a little bit by Falcone, these guys are elated to hear this is going to happen. And this is a big-time reversal for Bruce Wayne. Do you guys remember, all the way back in issue number 1, we had the then chair of the Gotham City Bank, a character who was named Richard Daniel, who had been influenced one way or another by Falcone, was making this proposal that the bank was going to go into business with Falcone, and was just on the point of doing so when Bruce Wayne made a big objection, and then, that evening, Batman paid a visit to Mr. Daniel's home to scare him out of doing that, and led to Mr. Daniel actually leaving Gotham and resigning his position on the bank, and Bruce then being installed as the chair of the bank. Well, we get some narration boxes from Bruce Wayne as he is leaving this meeting after making this announcement about doing business with Falcone Imports, where he's even saying to himself, like, I heard the words coming out of my own mouth, and yet I can't believe that I was saying them. Why was this? Well, we get a panel, and if you look closely, and this will be a page that we put up as some of the sample art on our Instagram account, at Graphic Novel Apostle, you can see as Bruce Wayne reaches up to put his hat on his head as he's exiting the bank, there is something green protruding from under the cuff of his shirt sleeve. Well, if you didn't happen to catch that, also as he's exiting the bank, Selina Kyle sees him and is calling out to him, "Bruce." We've got some romance that's been blooming between Selina and Bruce, but Bruce just walks right on and gets in a car that's waiting for him. And Selina can see, as Bruce opens the door to get into the back seat of this car, there is a green hand all covered in green ivy also on the back seat of this car. And Selina knows exactly who she's up against. So obviously, these events are bad for Bruce Wayne. They're going to be bad for his reputation within the community. They are going to be bad probably for Gotham City because it's going to become a hub of money laundering. And it's also bad for Selina Kyle because, well, her romantic interest is being swayed by somebody else and really isn't even in his own senses as far as she can tell these days. But these events are good if you are a criminal in Gotham City's underworld because the money is flowing through the bank again. And what was dirty can be washed. Well, Bruce Wayne goes back to his home, Wayne Manor, and he's having a quiet dinner with his new love interest, Poison Ivy. And she is sitting at one end of a long table with these almost like tentacle-like vines that have sort of taken the place of her hair, some of them reaching all the way across this long dining room table to Bruce, all the way at the other end. If you guys remember from the Batman 1989 movie, there's this scene where Bruce Wayne is sitting in this dining room having a date with Vicky Vale, played by Kim Basinger in that movie, and they are on opposite ends of this super long table, and Vale asks Wayne to pass the salt, and he has to stand up from his seat and walk like 10 steps to hand the salt to her. Well, similar idea here. They're in this big, fancy dining room. And suddenly Poison Ivy notices a little draft. It turns out this is because Catwoman has come in through the window, and she is attacking Poison Ivy. We've got a great 2-page spread here that I'm going to provide as a sample of the art as well on our Instagram page, where Catwoman is actually standing on this dining room table in this attack stance, just launching herself at Poison Ivy. Now, in the course of this, Bruce Wayne grabs Catwoman and tries to pull her off Ivy. And Catwoman turns her attention to Bruce at this point, and she tears his suit jacket and his shirt open, and you can see that Bruce Wayne is just covered all over his chest and his torso in this ivy, as if it had taken to growing all over him and was part of what was intoxicating or entrancing him. And once Catwoman tears all of this ivy off of Wayne's chest with her claws, he is finally able to break out of this trance that he has seemingly been in. There's going to be a page later in this issue, and I'm absolutely going to put this page up as one of the samples as well. It is beautiful, where Catwoman has gone up on the roof of the Gotham City Police Department and turned on the bat signal. And so Batman comes and responds to it, and of course he's expecting to find Captain Gordon there, but instead he finds Catwoman, who seemingly wants to take a victory lap for having saved Bruce Wayne. And I hope you guys remember from our last episode, Catwoman seems to have figured out that Bruce Wayne and Batman are one and the same. But Batman doesn't know for sure that Catwoman knows this. And so Batman is trying to thank Catwoman for saving Bruce Wayne without just coming right out and saying that they are the same person. And so Batman says, "Thank you." And Catwoman says, "Well, for what?" And he says, "Bruce Wayne is a friend." And Catwoman just gives a knowing, "Oh, well, while things seem to be advancing in our Bat and Cat romance story, not everything is quite so hopeful in Gotham City. In fact, if you're Maroni, you're about to have a bad night, because we get a black and white page where we see that gun with the tape wrapped around the handle, just like we've seen on black and white pages so many times throughout this series so far, and we see just a host of bullets flying through this front door of a Maroni building, and we see a group of men just piled up, bodies on this staircase. And in front of them all, we have left, in color on our otherwise black and white page, this little statue of a leprechaun with a clover on the bottom that says Erin Go Bra, Ireland forever. Well, after seeing this statue, The very next thing that we see is Sophia Falcone sitting in the back of a car outside of this same building. And she's looking at the door that's riddled in bullets, and she's looking at that little statue of the leprechaun that's sitting on the steps, and she says, "Someone beat us to it." Well, about the same time, Maroni is looking from his window down at the street, and he sees the back end of a car. Whether he sees Sophia Falcone sitting in that car or not, we don't know. But he just says one word, "holiday," and his eyes are wild, like he is both scared and enraged. Well, there's just one last bit of business to wrap up this issue of The Long Halloween, and that is a payoff that's going to take place in the Roman's office. We see Carmine Falcone meeting with a person who is not shown and sliding stacks of cash across his desk to a person who we can tell is Poison Ivy. And the Roman explains that had it not been for the interference of Catwoman, there was so much more we could have done together. And he also says that usually for the regular, I guess I'll call them, organized crime figures in Gotham, they have sort of an agreement to stay away from the more colorful type villains, the themed costume villains of Gotham, just because they're too unpredictable. But the Roman observes that one thing that he's learned in business is to expect the unexpected. Now, I want to add just an observation of my own right here, and that is being able to travel in Gotham City between the worlds of regular organized crime and themed villain crime is quite the skill set, something that can make you very successful in that city. And while this has nothing to do with The Long Halloween, the idea has come to me here. That is one of the reasons why the Penguin is Batman's best villain, the best member of his rogues gallery, because he is an organized crime boss, and yet at the same time one of these themed villains. And I'm hoping that he's going to make an appearance later in this series. I guess we'll see. Well, I will look forward to catching up with all of you as we come back and we have our April Fool's episode of Batman The Long Halloween next, and coming up hopefully within the next couple of weeks, our next book club episode as well, which I am really looking forward to sharing with all of you. And until then, keep reading those comics.